With Varlamore Part 2 coming out this week, I thought it'd be a nice time to catch up to speed on everything lore-related that we got in the first expansion. This video isn't going to be an official part of my lore series that you might be following, as I'd like to come back in the future and properly tell the story of Varlamore once it's completed, sometime in early 2025. Today, we'll just go over what we know in more of a bullet point fashion. So, long ago, before humans inhabited this area, it was home to the Old Ones, an ancient race. We learned this in Cassande's journal in the Garden of Death. So before Varlamore came out, we knew this. But not much is actually known about the Old Ones, just like that they're kind of associated with the Nagua, and they believed in a cycle of life and death for planets, which they called Zimwao, which was more like, death and rebirth. Sometime during the Third Age, which is when the God Wars happened, so like 4,000 to 6,000 years ago, the Ancient Ones started to face extinction. So they attempted a ritual for soul transference to transfer their souls to other bodies. All we know is that this failed and actually created the Strangler parasite, which is what has taken over Vardorvis in the Desert Treasure 2 quest. So that all happened somewhere up north. Only about 1,000 years ago, so the middle of the Second Age, Zarek's reign in Korend was known as the Age of Strife, and a bunch of refugees fled south past the Custodia Mountains and began coming into the area known as Varlamore. Those refugees included the Imcando dwarves, who settled in Camtorum. The Imcando dwarves have a crazy story, like they've been all over the map, but now they're here and this is where the bulk of their population lives. There's the Talkatsi, which was a group of nomads that eventually settled in the Talati rainforest. Tlati? There's gonna be a lot of that in this expansion. Tlati. And then the third group of refugees was the Paracans, who settled in the Avium Savannah and eventually founded Fortis, which would go on to become Civitalis Illa Fortis. So during this time, the dwarves kept to themselves for the most part. They built their city underneath Ralos's Rise, which is a historical, religious, significant place, because it's believed, I think, to be the only place that Ralos ever showed himself in person to mortals. We haven't even talked about Ralos and Rano yet, but they're the gods of the sun and the moon. Well, the worship of these gods, Ralos and Ranul, the god of the sun and the moon, is called Losanium, and it used to be practiced by the Talkatsi in complete private. Back on Korend, they actually used to worship these gods in the Forthos dungeon. That's the only place you can find reference to these gods. But once they came to Varlamore, they began practicing their religion openly, no longer in private, and they did so much that even the Paracans adopted their religion as well, and it became the religion of Varlamore. Thanks to their agreed religion, the civilization was, doing great. They were expanding, they were getting a lot of population, and so at some point they decided that they needed a second major city, which is when they all agreed, hey, the floating area of Tempestus is beautiful. We'd love to go there, but there is a cloud titan and a bunch of hill giants that occupy this land. So they banded together and Tempest Bay got cleared out. They killed all the hill giants, or most of them at least, and slayed the Cloud Titan. Their second city was built, Tempestus. This place looks sick. This is where the College of Bards are, and I can't wait to go there. Upon founding Tempestus, they became officially the Kingdom of Varlamore, and they got their name from the River Varla, which used to separate the two tribes, and now is a symbol of their unification. So for a long time, there were no internal conflicts in their rather peaceful nation. They only had the threat of monsters in their area. About 200 years ago, so around 800 years after humans officially got here, there was an adventurer fleeing another war in Korend known as the War of the Five Houses. He was fleeing because he refused to kill people and rather opted to kill monsters, so this was perfect for him. He was contacted by the dwarves, the Imcando dwarves. They commissioned him to slay a weather-producing demon that was wreaking havoc on the Avium Savannah. We don't know much about that demon, but we do know that the dwarves made for the adventure a silver blade. It might sound kind of familiar. I would imagine that's like a silver light. The story says that he slew that demon. He slew it. He slayed it. He killed it. He put it to rest. And the blood of that demon stained his sword black, which is exactly what happens to us in Shadow of the Storm when we get the Dark Light. So that's pretty cool. Another one of this adventure's accomplishments was recovering the Cloud Titan armor, apparently. So this armor is stored in the Grand Museum in Civitas, but obviously the story says that the Cloud Titan was slain years ago. It's just apparently the armor was never recovered, so this adventurer recovered the armor and brought it back to the museum, and then claimed that he killed the Titan himself. So there's a little bit of skepticism on both stories there. And the last of this adventurer's feats was defeating the Colossal Worm. This Colossal Worm was believed to come from the Hailstorm Mountains, which I'm not even sure where that is really. But he eventually settled in the Avium Savannah. It took a band of warriors to defeat the Colossal Worm, which the adventurer was part of. And now that sits over here. So Varlamore's first conflict would come when, roughly 100 years ago, a man named Imafor Tullus ascended the throne. He was a controversial guy. I believe he was the third king of the Tullus dynasty, but that's not exactly clear. But he reorganized the kingdom into more of an empire. On his 30th birthday, he invited the royal family of Korend to his party. And in the Sunrise Palace, during a great feast, he red wedding them. He Game of Thrones those guys. He poisoned their drinks and killed the royal family of Korend. This was obviously a big no-no, and so it led to Korend declaring war. And this war became known as the War of Betrayal. It was really unpopular among Varlamorians. Tullus took it to his deathbed, the reason that he did this, so no one actually knows why he decided to betray Korend like this. But nonetheless, the war lasted 6 years until finally at the Battle of Proudspire, a group of freedom fighters led by Mezpa Arkan confronted Tullus and captured him. Mezpa is actually Tullus's cousin, so he had some kind of claim to the throne there. Imafor was executed and the Tullus dynasty ends. Mezpa became king, and his first act of the Arkan dynasty was to behead every statue of his cousin. They kept all the statues, but they kept them beheaded as a warning. It's a crime in Varlamore to remove those statues, as they serve as a warning not to, I don't know, betray Korend for no reason. So over those 100 years, the relationship was getting slightly mended between Varlamore and Korend, with King Kares III from Korend sending the Royal Accord of Twill as like a peace offering, or just, he sent an envoy, said, hey, put this in your museum. There's a little story about how that Royal Twill got lost at sea. So now the one that's on display in the Grand Museum of Varlamore is actually a replica, but that's actually part of a whole Korend quest, and I don't think it's necessary to talk about today. So a couple generations later, we've got Queen Zianya Arkan as the Queen of Varlamore right now. She's Mezpa's great-granddaughter, and we know that she still wants the relationship to Korend to be okay, because she visited Korend during the coronation of King Candor Hosidius. Since its founding, Varlamore has limited its citizens from traveling outside of the continent to the College of Bards. So the only people that have left Varlamore are the College of Bards. We know this because we actually ran into one in sleep. He said that there were songs told of this area, so he came. But that all changes when Korend decides to open up trade routes with Mistalin. Queen Zianya saw Korend do it and said Varlamore should do it too. So she sent a delegation led by her son, Prince Itzla, to Mistalin. In that delegation, she also sent Servius, who is the Teokin of Ralos, like a priest, the high priest of Ralos. She also sent 6 knights of Varlamore, and then lastly, Ennius and Furia Tullus, who are twins from the Tullus dynasty. I don't know why you would keep these people around. It's kind of weird. I guess it's like a power play. The little twins work for you now, but that just sounds like a recipe for disaster to me. So, of course, in Varrock, the adventurer discovers a plot to assassinate Servius and foils it, and then the treaty between the two kingdoms is signed. Boom, we get Varlamore Part 1, and Itzla arranges a meeting with the adventurer, telling him yo, the delegation are the only people that knew Servius was out there. So one of them is guilty. And also, by the way, Servius is my dad. So Servius is the father of Itzla, who is also the son of the queen, which means the Servius and the queen, I don't know if that's legal. I don't know what the laws of Varlamore are, but that just seems like a conflict of interest. So after doing some digging around on everyone that went on that delegation, the adventurer finds that one of the knights, Vellum, had a very suspicious letter in his drawer. So he confronts Vellum along with the Tullus twins, and as Vellum is proclaiming innocence, Ennius Tullus instantly kills him without giving him a chance to plead his case. So obviously that was pretty suspicious. and the adventurer decided to tell Itzla that, hey, the twins might be a little sketchy, BK, because they just killed this guy who probably got framed. So Itzla says he'll keep an eye on the twins and then starts to tell the adventurer about a cult known as the Twilight Emissary. This cult is dedicated to bringing about the final dawn, which is an interpretation of Zimwow, the cycle of rebirth on planets. The difference is that these people believe that they need to bring about that end of days, whereas the old ones just believe that it would happen. As Itzla's explaining this, cultists storm the palace. The guards and our adventurer ward them off, but even though they weren't able to get inside, mysteriously Servius still is gravely wounded, and Metzli, the Teokin of Renewal, the god of the moon, is missing. Something's afoot. That's where we leave off on the Twilight Emissary questline. I don't know who's guilty. Is it the twins? I mean, Servius does not die at the end of that quest. He actually survives. I think they're trying to say, like, that whoever tried to kill him thinks that he might be dead now, so they might be done trying to kill him. But yeah, I mean, we brushed over it. There's the Teokin, the high priest of Renewal, as well as, Servius. She is missing. I don't know if she's guilty or kidnapped. Some other stuff in part one, like obviously we had the Moons of Peril. That's an ancient prison that's containing Nagua created by the old ones. Right now, there's not much to say about that. It's kind of its own standalone thing. It is what it is. The quest just doesn't really say anything besides, this is a prison. I gotta keep these guys in here. It does say, like, they're moon Nagua, which is why they're kept underground, because the moon would give them more power. And the Nagua that's protecting them, or the Nagua that's defending the prison, I can't remember her name, but she says that, like, oh, there's a bunch of plants and stuff down here and fish because I'm that type of Nagua and they give me more strength. So that's what we learned there. I mean, I think Perilous Moons will probably come back up in the final dawn, but we'll see. So what's coming this week? What you see up here, we have this northern snowy mountain area where we're gonna find the Dark Frost. The Dark Frost is a modern name for the Quadralpatal, where the Huayquatl lives. Okay, so the Quadralpetal is what the old ones called it. So we know that the Huayquatl has been there for a long, long time. There's that, of course. Up in that area is the Proud Spire. That's where the Toluses were overthrown. Nearby we have the Twilight Temple, which I'm sure that's gonna have something to do with the Twilight Emissaries. Down south, we're getting Alderaan. Not sure what the whole story behind Alderaan is gonna be. It's a culture-rich land with grapes and a brewery, an alchemical society. Over there, we're getting like a murder mystery quest. I don't think it'll be very lore-heavy, but I think it will be a nice area. The new quest that we are getting for the Twilight Emissary storyline is called Heart of Darkness. Again, that's probably gonna take place mostly up here. And then, of course, in part one, we had the lily pad labor dispute. We've been told that we'll get a lot more quests like that just breathe life into the area. So that's all. Everything that's grayed out over here is coming in Varlamore Part 3. And gee whiz, guys, I can't wait. But yeah, that's just a quick catch up to get you up to speed. Now you know what's going on. You'll remember what's happening with the Twilight Emissaries, and I hope you enjoy the update this week. Shoot, I should probably mention this. I mean, I'm at 1,000 subs, guys. I've been putting real effort into these videos for like 2 months, and we're already at 1,000. It means a lot. I'm excited to keep going. I don't want to say too much on it right now. Just, yay, let's go.